Hi, this is Peter Woolfolk speaking. Now, first of all, thank you so very much for listening to the podcast. Now, I am very excited to let you know that the podcast is now available on Amazon Alexa. You know the drill. Simply say, Alexa, play Public Relations Review Podcast, and she'll take it from there. And again, thank you for listening. And if you enjoy the program, please become a subscriber. Now, on to the podcast.
Welcome. This is the Public Relations Review Podcast, a program to discuss the many facets of public relations with seasoned professionals, educators, authors, and others. Now, here is your host, Peter Woolfolk.
Welcome to the Public Relations Review Podcast, and to our listeners all across America and our listeners all around the world. Just a point of information, when we say all around the world, that's exactly what we mean. According to our data, we have listeners in 121 of the 197 countries the United Nations says that there are. And spread across those 120 countries, we have listeners in 1,777 cities. And so we're just about worldwide. However, question. How do you measure the success of your PR project? Needless to say, you must have a system to collect the data that reveals how your project performed and if your predetermined objectives were achieved. Well, worry no more. We have an answer for you today. My guest today is Sasha Dookhoo. She is with Crenshaw Communications, and she joins us today from Gainesville, Florida. Sasha, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Peter. How are you?
I'm doing just great. Now, you recently had an article published that clearly outlines the 5 key performance indicators, or KPIs, essential for any public relations program to determine its success. So let's identify each one of those indicators, and then why is that important, and how does one go about collecting the data from those as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think whenever you're starting off a PR campaign with a client, it's essential to have sort of a benchmark for PR performance to help you quantify and qualify those results. So when we think of the 5 KPIs, it's really about, firstly, earned media mention, second, potential reach, third, share of voice, fourth, website traffic and referrals, and fifth, social media engagement. And overall, these 5 KPIs are able to measure the success of your program and help you to align best with your client.
Mm-hmm. So then, now let's talk about earned media mentions. Let's go into a wee bit of detail about how one goes about determining earned media.
Absolutely. So earned media is essentially the coverage you get from the PR relationship you have with an agency, right? So it's whatever articles, podcasts, broadcast segments that really carry out the most weight when it comes to PR KPI. So they are essential to the program. This coverage could, appear online. It could appear in print. So it's really about evaluating the value of it and seeing how powerful it is to build media awareness, to build that credibility for the brand, and to get your client the visibility they need. And when we looked at the brand for lead generation opportunities, it can help move the needle in terms of driving their customers to them.
Mm-hmm. One of the things when you mentioned particularly earned media is that not too long ago we actually had another guest on the show, the guy who created, if you will, Propel PRM, which is the public relations management tool that specifically helps you collect data on your earned media mentions. So Propel, it's obviously they've got the complete version that costs so much per month, but they also have a free version. So to help people get this information, because you have to have some way to collect this information, Propel Media is certainly one of those tools that one should you should perhaps have at hand. And there are a number of others, but I just wanted to bring that to listeners' attention since they were a guest on the show not long ago. Do you have any particular tools that you use for to track earned media?
There are a variety of them out there. We've used TrendKite, we've used Meltwater, There's also Signal AI, so quite a few tools out there. It really just depends on what you're trying to get value for the client and what works best for you in terms of usability.
Okay, all right. Now, you also mentioned potential reach as another one of those KPIs. Talk a bit about that.
Absolutely. So the potential reach is a media placement is only as good as the number of people who've viewed the piece, right? So when we're looking at potential reach, it's the number of people who've read your article, who've listened to your podcast or your broadcast recording, and it really spans the array of coverage in terms of social media, website, page views. So it's really holistic in that sense. And it provides the greatest credibility because you're looking at maybe it's a website, the unique visitors monthly. This is who could essentially extend the value of your earned media coverage. So it's really strong for visibility.
So in terms of collecting the data from that, folks have to have a number of different tools or at least platforms that they have to go to check the data on that. Is that right, to collect that information?
Yes. Absolutely. So we've used tools like SimilarWeb, SEMrush. There's also HypeStat. So quite a variety of tools out there to help you track the reach and how many people are actually viewing your articles.
You've used a number of them. Do you find any particular tool is better than another simply because it provides more information or more accurate information? I
think overall the data is pretty valid across the board. We typically use SimilarWeb, and then there are some smaller blogs that don't appear on SimilarWeb, so we've used HypeStat instead in those occasions. But between the two of them, you should definitely be able to get the potential reach for any publication.
Now, you have another one here. It's called Share of Voice. Let's talk a bit about exactly what that is and how one obviously collects that data.
Yes. So Share of Voice is really looking at your media coverage overall. So it could include earned media coverage, and may include paid media coverage if that's a metric you're measuring as well. So it's really holistic and all-encompassing in that sense. And the great thing about the Share of Voice tools is that they could look at coverage across brands. You can easily include your client as well as their competitors to see who Share of Voice is better, how we're tracking against those main players in the industry. So it's a really strong tool for us as PR pros because it includes the volume of the reach of the coverage as well as factors like the domain authority. And when I say domain authority, I mean the search engine ranking of a piece of coverage. So even though, for example, your competitor may have gotten 6 pieces of coverage, you've gotten 3, perhaps the domain authority drove up your Share of Voice coverage compared to your competitor just because it had a higher search engine ranking.
Mm-hmm. Now, this is probably just an idea that came to my mind as I'm listening to this. The size of the project that people are putting on that they need a measurement for. Have you looked into how big the project should be or how small it should not be to put these measurement tools into action?
It all depends on the timeline you're looking for. So we've done multiple campaigns that are 3 to 6 month campaigns where we just look at the Share of Voice for that period. If we're looking for something that's a little more smaller, so if maybe be a 1 month run for a campaign, then we'll look at a month timeline. So obviously your Share of Voice a month for a campaign versus 6 months will be a little smaller. So it really depends on you just aligning with the clients and understanding their needs.
Okay. And I guess that brings up another question when you say aligning with the clients. Now, are the clients comfortable with or understand all these various indicators? Do they ask these questions, or do you just present this information to them as you say, we'll find here's the success we've had and here are the numbers to validate where your reach got you to?
That's a really great point, Peter. It's really about proving our value. So when we look at these KPIs, a lot of the times our clients maybe have heard of 1 or 2 of them, but we try to present everything that we put forth with these KPIs in mind as we prove our value in PR and just kind of do some PR for ourselves in that sense.
Now, have you determined, is there a difference between, let's say, a client that happens to be a nonprofit organization as compared to one that's a profit-driven corporation? Any differences there?
Yes, sometimes in terms of how they prioritize their KPIs. So a nonprofit may want to look at more website traffic and referrals from an earned media piece, while a for-profit organization may care more about social engagement or earned media coverage. So it really, again, comes back to just aligning with them, ensuring that we're benchmarking toward the KPIs that they care most about and are important to their organizational goals.
Okay. Now, you've also got here website traffic and referrals. Just talk a bit about that.
Yes. So this is really looking at your client's Google Analytics for their website and tracking any backlinks from a media placement. So it's, let's say we got an earned media coverage in CNN, and it includes a mention of the client with their website link. So any backlinks from that link that are driving readers to your company's website is really essential here. And when we look at major placements in high domain authority publications, we may see website traffic spikes during that time if we look at the client's Google Analytics. So it's really important to sort of pinpoint the backlinks when we can, but it's important to note as well that not all publications do include backlinks. A lot of them have policies now where they just don't include websites to your client's site on their page. It's just something they do. So it's just important to note that as well, and make it clear to the client that even though they may have gotten a big earned media placement, they may not see that spike in traffic.
Mm-hmm. You know, as I listen to a range of these things, I just think about some of the things that people do to promote an event or activity of some kind. Even such a small thing such as handing out flyers because it's going to be an outdoor event sometime in the near future. Is there a particular area that or category that you would put that under, flyer distribution, so to speak?
I think that would more fall under the engagement KPI, which is the fifth one. So looking at your measuring the month-over-month social engagement, whether that's like a flyer in hand or just posting it on social media as well. So just getting the word out there and creating visibility around your event.
And one of the other people we had on this show maybe a couple of years ago was Katie Payne, the measurement queen. As she calls herself, is that, sometimes you can create your own measurement tool based on what it is you're going to do to try to generate traffic or get exposure. Have you run across those circumstances?
Yes, absolutely. And I'm very familiar with Katie, and she sure is the measurement queen. We've run into instances where we've had clients that want us to create a metric just based on certain factors of an earned media placement. So, for example, we created like a specific metric that just looked at how strong a media placement was based on whether, for example, their name was in the headline of the piece, whether there was a backlink in the article, and also whether we had an executive quoted in it. So these are all factors that you can weigh with your client, and if it's something that's important to them, just absolutely, you can make your own metric and ensure that it's clear across the board.
Mm-hmm. Now, have you had an opportunity to take this information or present this information to people in the C-suite? Let's talk about the levels of people in an organization that want this information, because obviously there might be, let's say, a product manager as compared to the vice president of a division. Where are the different levels where you've presented this kind of information to clients?
Yeah, so typically we're working with the marketing team for an organization, but they do report back to the CEO and the rest of the C-suite. So I think it's really important that they have an understanding of the value of these KPIs, and they can accurately report it back to the C-suite. For a lot of our clients now, they've asked us to just create KPI trackers. So we're sort of seeing this shift in the industry. Instead of making your monthly report or a quarterly report where you're just kind of like throwing a deck together with some visuals and just a lot of qualitative content. They want to to quantify it a little more. So they're asking us for metrics trackers where we sort of like align with key KPIs and how we're tracking against key themes we may have presented in our PR plan. So we're definitely seeing sort of this shift into more metrics-driven behavior.
Mm-hmm. Now, have you used, because when we talk about measuring, let's say, earned media or even media placements, have you used outside organizations that can track media placements, media monitoring organizations, so to speak? Or do you just use tools on your computer or a combination thereof?
Yes, primarily they're just tools that we have as an agency, but there are occasions, especially with broadcast, for example, where we've used tools like TV Ice to get the full media clip. So it just really depends on what you're trying to find in terms of our earned media coverage.
And I asked that because, again, I guess a while back I did have one of the media monitoring companies, several of them. I've had Burrell's and another one on. And they can track this information, whether it's here in the U.S. or in a foreign country. So
nice.
In terms of, as you said, getting earned media or that sort of coverage, they have the tools to do that. And I'm just wondering, had you guys ever used that and engaged any of that level company based on some projects you've been involved in? Yeah,
for the most part, we're looking at primarily U.S. coverage. Some of our clients do have international agencies, so they're tracking that more UK or Deutschland coverage in those areas. But yes, those tools would be effective if we were tracking global coverage.
Okay. Now, let me ask you, now you mentioned we've talked about 5 indicators here. Are there any other indicators, performance indicators that you've used that we have not talked about?
I think these are the key ones for now. I would say that with potential reach, yes, like UVM sort of falls under there. And when we look at reach as well, sometimes we could also segment the domain authority for a website out. So domain authority essentially is a tool that you use, and it measures the domain of a website from 0 to 100, and a lot of the good websites sort of fall in the 80 to 100 range, and we consider tier 2 anything like 50 to 79. So when you're looking at those as well, that could be bridged out as its own sort of metric.
Mm-hmm. Well, Sasha, you provided the listeners with an awful lot of indication in our brief time here. Is there anything that we perhaps should have covered that we did not cover thus far?
I think we got all of the key essentials out there. I will leave listeners with this. When we look at our KPIs, it's really essential that we're looking at our clients' SMART goals, right? So we want to make sure they're specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based. So just ensuring there's clear alignment across the board, and we've got our client buy-in in terms of the metrics we're measuring and their understanding as well, because we could throw all the numbers out there in the world, but if the client doesn't understand it, that's a problem in itself. So just making sure we're as clear as possible and there's some understanding there.
Well, good. Well, Sasha, let me thank you so very, very much for joining us here today on the Public Relations Review podcast. And I'd certainly like to thank my listeners also for joining in. And if you've enjoyed the show, we'd certainly like to get a great review from you. And also, you might want to share this episode with your friends and colleagues as well. And if you'd ever like to contact us with some ideas that you'd like to, some topics you'd like to hear us cover, you can go to our Public Relations Review website, Public Relations Review podcast website. And you can find out how to contact us there. So, again, thank you so very much for listening. Thank my guest, Sasha Dookhoo with Crenshaw Communications. And be sure to give us a listen on the next edition of the Public Relations Review podcast.
This podcast is produced by Communications Strategies. an award-winning public relations and public affairs firm headquartered in Nashville, Tennessee. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, this is Peter Woolfolk. First, let me say thank you so much for being a listener. Now, I want to alert you to our shiny new podcast website located at podpage.com. However, you can go directly to the podcast site located at publicrelationsreviewpodcast.com. There, you can contact me through email. You can leave a voice message. You can leave a review. You can read an episode blog and frequently learn about the podcast guests. You might also want to suggest podcast topic ideas or even suggest a guest. You can also let me know if you would like to receive our podcast listener logo that you can post on your social media. So I look forward to hearing from you about our new podcast website. Thank you so much for listening to the Public Relations Review podcast, and have a great day.